presentations from the 10 different finalists tomorrow, so be sure not to miss that. And then we have a series of really great panels on Saturday, particularly the closing panel that's going to be at the end of the day on Saturday afternoon. So be sure not to miss that either, culminating with the gala. Besides the program, we have a lot of other great things going on. Be sure to take a chance to go out and check out the exhibit hall. We have a whole bunch of really great exhibits out there, including some with some really interesting hardware, something that we haven't had as much of in the past, so be sure to check that out. Also, we do have some tickets left for the lunches and for the gala, so if you're interested in that, please do so as soon as possible. Go ahead and get those. Aside from that, just take the opportunity here to enjoy the programming, to enjoy the and benefit from the networking opportunities. We'll have a number of networking breaks, one in the morning, one in the afternoon for each day, so be sure to take advantage of those and just generally be able to network. We also have networking events in the evenings for more opportunities. And with that, just a couple of logistical notes. One thing is staff. So you'll see the various badges that are flying around. If you see anybody with the traffic light badge, so yellow, red, green, those are staff. So yellow is the chairs, the red are the managers, and green are the staff. So if you have any questions at any time, go ahead and see anybody with traffic light colors, and they'll be able to help you out, get you any information that you need. Second thing is I'd like to introduce everybody to Curtis Iwata. He is our day manager for today, so he's going to be emceeing the rest of the day, introducing the speakers and the panels. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and move on to the next panel. So I'd like to introduce Dave Radzanowski, the Chief of Staff of NASA HQ. One thing I would like to mention is that Jim Muncy would like to say that he regrets that he's not able to make it, and so apologizes for not being able to introduce you himself. Dave has led quite a career with civil service between NASA and various other agencies. Through that, between creativity, integrity, commitment to progress to space, helping out young people, and really giving us an example for what we can strive to. And so that really allows him to tie in and be a great introductory speaker for this conference because we hold a lot of the same ideals. And so what he's going to be talking about is, again, one of the key themes that we have for the conference, which is engaging partnerships, particularly between commercial and civil space. So with that, I'll hand it over to Dave.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me today to come to speak at NewSpace 2012. It's really good to get this old bureaucrat out in the fresh air, surrounded by folks and organizations who are out there. You all are really pushing the envelope of innovation for a cause that actually is near and dear to my heart in terms of space exploration of the heavens. I have always loved space since I can ever remember, and it is a real privilege to be here amongst folks who share the dream as much that I do. The administrator, Charlie Bolden, Deputy Administrator Lori Garver, send their regards. They are traveling today. We're unable to come to speak to you. So you get me. Hopefully I'll be able to fit the bill for you all. They do wish you all a very successful NewSpace 2012 conference. Over the past, I guess, 2 decades, in terms of my professional time, I have seen the commercial space sector really thrive in some areas. I've seen it stumble in others. And yet, through all the peaks and valleys that I've seen over the past 20 years, I have seen a consistent dedication to the dream of exploration for all humankind. You all continue to keep the flame going. You all continue to keep it burning. And these days, I think it's burning brightly, and I will talk to you as why I think that is true. Now, some people will say that it's burning brightly despite NASA. Others may say that current and future successes in exploration would have not been possible without NASA. But no matter what your viewpoint is, I hope that we can all agree that there really are some key intersection of our activities in the commercial sector and the civil sector that would really benefit greatly from our partnering. And that's my message to you here today and that we need to really strengthen those partnerships that we have here today, and we need to look forward and identify where the opportunities are for future partnering as we go on beyond low Earth orbit. One of the ways, of course, we are partnering now is our commercial space initiatives. It was a historic moment, I think, in May when SpaceX became the first company to launch to the International Space Station, berth to the station, and then recover the Dragon capsule after a water landing. I mean, this was awesome. It really was. The excitement it raised was not only felt in the United States, it was really felt across the world, and I can actually vouch for that. At the time, I was on vacation outside Madrid, trying to help out the Spanish economy. And I was at breakfast, and the gentleman next to me pointed to a picture of the Dragon. It was at the local paper in Toledo, and it had a front page above the fold picture of the Dragon. And a gentleman said to me, "Isn't that something?" And you know, I actually told him he didn't know who I was. I told him he had no idea how fantastic that was. And so we'll likely look back at that moment as a real turning point, I think. But it's not going to be the only one, and it's going to continue. We're going to see a lot more of these in the coming years, particularly in the partnerships with NASA and private industry. The momentum, it's been building for quite a while. When we first started our COTS, our Commercial Orbital Space Transportation Services program, back in 2006, 6 years ago, I think a lot of people were skeptical. At the time, we were still planning to develop, if you all remember, Constellation's program, the Ares 1X rocket to reach the ISS. And we were only looking at the commercial industry to help and assist out on cargo. Since 2006, our commercial partners, they've been plugging along. A new president saw great value in amplifying our investment in the commercial sector more broadly and as a pivotal part of NASA's exploration strategy, and to include not just cargo services to the space station, but commercial crew services to low Earth orbit and the International Space Station. So that's where we are today. Really, our partners they're successfully achieving their milestones in both cargo and crew development. We'll soon be evolving our commercial crew development program to our Commercial Crew Integrated Capability Program, or as we like to use acronyms in NASA, the CCICAP. Although expanding COTS was perhaps foreseen, the various ways we've been able to reach out and branch out and facilitate innovation at many levels besides cargo. We're now looking at entire transportation systems. We're now looking at supporting technologies. All of this is going to be a great benefit to our direction and a great benefit to our nation. So where have we come since 2006? Now I'm going to go over some details. I'm sure a lot of you know these, but I think it's important to see where our partnering has come from 2006 to where we are today. SpaceX had a Space Act agreement with NASA for $396 million. The flight completed in May was the last milestone of that agreement, and the report on that flight is due in August. Once that report is received, the final milestone is achieved, and we will expect cargo delivery service to begin to the space station by the end of the year. So we started in 2006, and here we are today talking about actual cargo services to space station. It's happening, it's a reality. It's a pretty incredible accomplishment, particularly for those who, I'm sure, were very skeptical when we began that 6 years ago. And it's not only a really good accomplishment, it's a lot of return on investment to the taxpayer. It's going to yield great economic benefit as well going forward. But the key is, you know, from a bureaucrat, civil servant standpoint, the investment for the taxpayer is quite enormous because of the additional private investment that went into this capability. And we are getting something for a lot less we would have gotten if we had done it ourselves. And that is key, and that is key going forward, particularly given the budget constraints we see going forward. And I don't know about you, but I don't see them getting better for a while, despite the money I'm trying to spend in Spain. Now, we had a second Space Act agreement with the Orbital Sciences Corporation, and their Space Act agreement is for $288 million. They began with us in 2008, so 4 years ago. They have met 24 out of their 29 milestones. They are a critical initial commercial user of the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport at Wallops Island, Virginia. So now we're seeing sort of the spaceport concept, along with Kennedy Space Center in Florida, of course, Spaceport America, others. The concept of spaceport is something that is evolving. Back in one of my first jobs in the 90s, I worked for the Congressional Research Service, and I wrote a report for space politics, and it was about commercial spaceports and the promise of commercial spaceports. That was back in the early 90s. I'm very excited to see where we are on this today. And orbital is a key critical part of the Space Act Agreement, not just bringing cargo to station, but also having a commercial spaceport in the Wallops area. So, soon these cost Space Act agreements will soon be complete. Cargo transportation services to the ISS will be accomplished. We will be going forward, and we'll be using fixed price service contracts for that program, not the cost plus that we usually use. Now let's move into crew. Cargo has evolved into crew. And the commercial crew program has built on the success of COTS, and it's built on the model. With it, we're looking to work with a variety of industry partners to develop low Earth orbit crew transportation capabilities to the ISS to meet NASA's need, or for other non-NASA customers. Commercial crew development, which I'm going to call round one, was in the 2010 to 2011 timeframe. It involved 7 partners who advanced technologies move them forward in areas such as life support and engines. The second phase, known as CCDEV2, began with funded Space Act agreements in April 2011, and it's continuing now, and it's continuing into late 2012. We have 4 partners who were funded in CCDEV2, the Boeing company, who is developing the CST-100 space capsule, the Sierra Nevada Corporation, who is developing the Dream Chaser, a lifting body spacecraft. We have SpaceX also, who not only in cargo is involved with crew, they're developing a crew version of their Dragon spacecraft. And we have Blue Origin, who's developing a biconic crewed spacecraft. In addition, we actually have 3 partners who are unfunded. So we're partnering with agencies, but we are not necessarily spending direct taxpayer funding as part of the agreement. We have United Space Alliance, who's developing a human-rated version of the Atlas V. We have Allied Tech Systems, Inc., or ATK. They're developing the Liberty launch vehicle, which is based on a lot of the work that was done in the Constellation program on Ares 1. And we have Excalibur Almaz, Inc., developing spacecraft for future space tourism. So we're seeing more partnering, both funded and unfunded, that are focused on areas of how we deal with getting humans to low Earth orbit. Here, too, we've seen quite a few number of milestones reached. And some of our partners, they've actually already completed their work on this phase of the program in CCDEV2. For example, some of the milestones that we've met, Pratt & Whitney Wakadine has successfully completed a series of tests on the thruster that's being designed for the Boeing CST-100. Sierra Nevada has completed a successful test of the nose landing gear for its full-scale Dream Chaser engineering flight test vehicle. This gear test is an important milestone to prepare for the upcoming approach and landing test of the Dream Chaser space system later this year. And with NASA, technical consultation, with ULA, we didn't have it funded, but we provided technical consultation. They have completed a review of their Atlas V launch vehicle to assess its compliance with NASA human spaceflight safety and performance requirements. ULA has partnered to launch the CST-100, the Dream Chaser, and Blue Origin space vehicle to missions to low Earth orbit in the ISS. So a lot of these pieces also work together in terms of partnerships beyond the NASA industry partnerships. Now our next phase, is coming very soon. I would say very soon. I'm not going to make any news by saying when, but real soon, folks. CCICAP. We will be making those awards as part of the next phase of our commercial crew development. Our partners will receive Space Act agreements again, just like we've done in COTS and just like we've done in CCDev 1 and 2. They'll receive Space Act agreements to complete designs for their entire transportation systems. We're not talking about components and little milestones. We are talking about entire transportation systems now. And during a 22-month base period, they are going to conduct risk reduction testing of those entire systems. They will also include optional milestones that would culminate in crewed orbital demonstration flights. We're not talking about technologies and milestones and capabilities and components and system requirements and system reviews. We're talking about an effort that could ultimately end up culminating in demonstration flights. Now, there is another part of this that we need to talk about is NASA. We have our needs as to why we're developing it. We want to send crew to station on American entities and not purchase it from Russia. We have certain requirements of getting our crews to the space station. And so we are working on an acquisition strategy to help certify the systems that would fly NASA crews to the ISS. We're finalizing that acquisition strategy with the commercial crew program and the NASA leadership, and that also is going to be announced soon. I wouldn't say very soon, but soon. And with that, with the crew development, with this, what we're calling a sort of a certification contracts, then we're going to talk about the actual contract to purchase commercial crew services to ISS. We've made great progress since this started in 2010. It's been 2 years. And now we're talking about funding things that actually lead to demonstrations and then ultimately services to ISS. And our commercial partners would be undoubtedly providing potentially services to other places in low Earth orbit. Meanwhile, there's other aspects of it, and I know George Neal's going to be here later this week or maybe today to talk about what FAA is doing in this arena. FAA and NASA recently signed a historic agreement to coordinate standards for commercial space travel of government and non-government astronauts to and from low Earth orbit and to the ISS. We're collaborating, we're partnering within agencies. It's not just partnering between industry and NASA. So we're partnering between other government agencies to help expand the efforts and provide what we hope is a stable framework for U.S. space industry. We want to avoid conflicting requirements. We want to avoid multiple sets of standards. And at the same time, we have a responsibility of the taxpayer to advance both public and crew safety. So I'm sorry, George, when he comes and he talks later, we'll talk a lot more about this. So as you can see, commercial space is a pretty busy portfolio. We've met a lot of milestones. We still have a lot of milestones to go before commercial crew to ISS will become a reality. But we have made tremendous progress. And I think it's actually not too early to ask how we could apply the COTS model, the milestones and methods that we've been using commercial crew, and how we can apply other commercial concepts to future beyond low Earth orbit exploration activities, particularly when it makes sense, and particularly given our budget constraints that we're likely to see for quite a while. The examples we're seeing of our partnering with industry are making our achieved things at a lower cost. There's no doubt about that. And if we are going to go forward and achieve our goals for the taxpayer, we need to find ways in the future to partner more beyond what we are doing so that we can achieve our goals as soon as possible, given the budget constraints that we have. So from 2006 to today and going forward, the commercial industry is going to be a key component of our strategy. Now, I'm gonna skip over a couple things here because I know that I would like to open up the questions and answers. The one thing I would say is I really think that the model for commercial crew is going to serve us well in a lot of ways as we move ahead. What we're talking about is paying for milestones once they are achieved and once a capability has been demonstrated. And since we are not only buying a service, since we're only buying a service, not a system, the company can sell their services with lower cost, hopefully, to other partners, and other economic benefit is achievable. This model, I think, has been successful in COTS. It looks like it's going to be successful in commercial crew. And I think you'll probably see a lot more in the future of NASA paying for capabilities rather than a mission-specific system. We are looking for continued innovation from industry. We are looking for you to continue to broaden the market of your services so that you can maintain lower cost to NASA as we purchase these services. In the meantime, there's going to be a lot of work that has to be done in-house. R&D the old-fashioned way without necessarily a guaranteed government contract. That's going to need to happen. We are committed to commercial space. We need to work together to determine where and when it makes sense for us to partner and where it does not. Honestly, there are areas it doesn't make sense that we are a partner, and it's a lot of areas that we make sense, and there's a lot of areas that we just don't need to be in your knickers, to be honest. And we need to dialogue. We need to talk. We need to continue to talk and partner. There are key folks on the agenda in the coming days that are here from NASA. We have the Center Director panel later today, which I encourage you all to participate in and engage in. We have Phil McAllister coming later today to talk about our commercial spaceflight program. And in the coming days, we have Mason Peck, our chief technologist, who will be here talking about what technologies NASA is investing in. They are here to share, but they are also here to listen. And I really encourage you to find ways to interact with them so that we can discuss ways that we can further our partnerships to meet our mutual goals. So in closing, I would just like to say that the door to the next era, it's not creaking open. It's been kicked off the hinges, all right? More and more folks are walking through it, and I think we're going to see a continuation of it. So the next steps we should take should be shoulder to shoulder, in partner where it makes sense, and key from a NASA perspective at doing it in a way that reduces the cost to the taxpayer while achieving our mutual goals. Again, thank you for inviting me. Thank you to the conference and the folks who have organized this conference. It's been great to work with you all. I look forward to hearing your ideas of how we can strengthen our partnership. And this is the part I really like. I'd love to open up the questions, anything that you have about what I've said, about what's going on. I'll tell you if I can't tell you. But in general, I hope that we can have a dialogue going forward. Thank you.
With the changes that have been going on with NASA, I deal a lot with the general public, and we're privy to the great advancements that are still taking place, but a lot of the people who are outside of this circle, they really don't know. They just see what they see on the news, and they feel like NASA's shutting down. I'm sure you've heard about, what general public has to say about that. My question is, what's NASA doing to kind of let the American people know that space is still on the rise in America, and also letting the people know about these different things that are going on?
Okay, that is something that's not new. It's always a challenge in terms of getting the word out as what NASA is doing. The space shuttle was a very visible activity that people pay attention to, and I've experienced exactly what you've said of folks think NASA is shutting down. It is far from the truth. I think folks, when they saw the Dragon mission, the SpaceX Dragon mission, were like, hey, well, actually, there is a lot of things going on. And I think what's gonna help going forward is, as we're talking about these partnerships today that we're doing now, as we continue to see these milestones going forward, and when they are not just paper, when there are actual missions, actual capability demonstrations, drop tests, missions, orbital missions are going forward, people are going to see that we are not shut down. On our side of NASA, we are constantly trying to get out and spread the word as what we are doing. We have an obligation to the taxpayer to tell them how we're spending their money. And we get out there. I mean, one of the reasons the administrator and deputy is not here is they are out today spreading the word that NASA has a plan, we have a mission, we are going forward. It's incredibly exciting. Yes, we have, like any other government agency right now, our budget constraints. We're not seeing our budgets going up, but $17, $18 billion, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. We can do a lot of things. And so whether it's in science and missions, we have the MSL landing up here coming up in August. That is probably the most difficult robotic mission that we have ever achieved. Well, we haven't achieved it yet, but I'm confident we're going to. So I think that's the biggest one for us, is that we have to continue to keep executing successfully and getting the word out there. And I think that a lot of what we're seeing here in the partnering we're doing in the cargo and then the crew mission will help get the word out that we are still living. We still have, most of the time, 6 astronauts from across the world in space continuously. There's a lot going on. So, did I answer your question, sir? Yeah. Thank you. Other questions?
Yes, David, Dallas Beanhoff. What's NASA doing in regard to planning for potential sequestration of funds if we have another budget impasse this year?
Oh, man, I hope I wasn't going to be asked that question. Sequestration. Let me just say a couple things about sequestration. It was put in place to not happen because it is so unpalatable, right? In many ways, it was put in place for Congress and the administration to work together to ultimately, at some point, figure out how to address our budget deficits in a way that makes sense. Now, there was a congressional panel put together, at least initially, to how to achieve that. It was not successful. But there's still time. And I think there is actually confidence. If you talk to the leadership of the administration or Congress, most people believe it's not going to happen, that they're going to do something about it. They're confident because the alternative is not good policy, and it's not a good way to run. It's not a good way to run a railroad, right? And so I'll just overlay that and say there is confidence it's going to be addressed with Congress and the administration. So your specific answer is, what is NASA doing? We've started thinking about it, of what it would mean in general. At some point, agencies don't necessarily go off and do planning without some guidance at some point coming from Office of Management Budget, where I previously worked. And I would assume at some point there would be some direction to us to how do you start planning. Again, people don't think it's going to be happening. So on one hand, you don't want to unsettle everybody for something and spend a lot of time on figuring out for something that doesn't make sense. But at the same time, there is some planning that is going to be necessary for, there's not a 0% chance. It's small. I definitely believe it's small that it would happen, but we have to be prepared for it. And so we, I'm sure internally, particularly in our budget office, have already started thinking about what it would mean, how it would be implemented in that. But I think really a lot of the significant planning is going to be happening, maybe September, October, when you're starting to go into the next fiscal year. Thanks, sir. Question.
Hi, my name is Ioana Cosmuța, and I work at Science and Technology Corporation as a contractor at Ames Research Center. I've probably been with NASA for the past more than 8 years. Worked on Orion, on Stardust, on MSL, especially on reentry technologies and risk and reliability. My question to you is about the challenges on the certification for human flight related to commercial crew. And I think one component is design tools and models. My observation, having worked with them, is that all these models are more appropriate to the Apollo era than to the 21st century NASA missions. What are we doing? And honestly, I don't see consistent effort within NASA in trying to address these things. One of the biggest challenges is flight data. So is there some negotiation at higher levels on getting flight data from the commercial crew and to be used internally? I'd like to hear your thinking. Thank
Okay.
you.
I don't have a lot of details for you because it's as I said earlier, we're talking about, as part of CCICAP, there'll be a separate, what we're calling certification phase. Is how we certify that these systems meet our requirements for crew safety, for NASA astronauts, as well as, how you in the vicinity and docking with the space station. We've already done that with SpaceX in terms of Dragon, and we've done that for orbital. This certification phase activity will allow for an interchange of information on that, a dialogue, so that the commercial providers will be able to say, here's how we think we're going to meet your requirements, and here's the data. And we're going to look at it and say, yes, we believe that meets the intent of the requirements. We certify that you're meeting that. Or that's going to say, let's talk about it. Let's talk about, because the systems that there's no one size fits all here. If you look at the systems that are potentially out there, they have different ways of meeting those requirements. We aren't going to dictate, you have to meet it this way. What it really is what I've talked about. It's a dialogue of, here's our requirements, sharing the data and information in the test of how they intend to meet the requirements, and we have that discussion going forward. So it's coming. I didn't say very soon. It's coming. It's coming soon, because as we do the CCI cap, people are going to be developing their end-to-end systems, and that they need to know that their systems are going to meet NASA requirements. So there's going to have to be something that comes soon afterward to look at whether these systems make sense and how they meet requirements. Did I answer your question?
Partly. I think the challenge inside is, also within NASA, is our internal requirements are not well validated because we do not have enough flight data. So how are we going to address that challenge?
You're talking to the wrong person on that.
Well, thank you.
You definitely, I think some of the experts who are coming later, like Phil McAllister, definitely convey that, and particularly some of the center directors who are here later to talk about that. So
Thank you.
apologies.
Hey, Mr. Radzanowski, it's a pleasure to see you again and talk to you again. One quick question and one a little bit longer question. The quick question first, do you guys foresee the possibility of unfunded Space Act agreements in this round, or are you just going to do the 2 to 3 funded that you're planning on doing?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. I think for sure it's the 2 to 3 concept of funded. Whether there'll be unfunded ones, I would definitely pose that to Phil McAllister when he's here later. When we did CCDev 2, we actually did not, I think going in, think about the unfunded aspect of it, but partners came forward and said, hey, we want to continue working these things, and as part of the partnering thing I'm talking about today is, where it does make sense, we want to go out there and assist in the ways that we can. And we don't necessarily have the money to be able to do that for everyone, but if there are ways that we can partner with folks who are not funded to work on these type of things, I think we would be open to those discussions.
And then more broadly, there seems to be at least some reluctance on in some quarters about using the COTS model within human spaceflight. But is there any what has been the consideration for using it in other parts of it? Like, is there some way to use the COTS model based on using the the two telescopes that the NRO gave NASA recently, or are there other sectors within SMD that could embrace that to show its success model, or is there some way we could utilize, the suborbital providers as a way to prove station experiments, because a lot of station experiments have to go through substantial, I'm wondering about other areas.
Yeah, and yes, I think we are definitely thinking it. In some cases, it may not be as specific exactly like the COTS model, but are there ways that we can purchase data versus buying the system? Purchase services. Are there ways that we need something specific, mission specific, that we don't care how you do it, we want the capability type of thing. So we are looking at that and models in other areas, and I can definitely say we've had discussions over the past few months of how we do apply this in other areas of NASA, not just human spaceflight. So the answer is NASA. Do I have anything specific? No, at this point in time. Stay tuned. You may be seeing some things potentially in future budgets, but we are looking at ways of applying the COTS model or other models. And the reality is, budgets aren't going to grow, as I said earlier. And we have very far-reaching goals. And to achieve those goals, we need to think about alternative ways of doing them that can reduce, again, the cost of the taxpayer. And these type of models and new ways of doing acquisition, I guess is how I'd say it, are ways that can help us meet our goals within the constraints that we have. So we're definitely thinking about it. Next, we have to put our money where our mouth is.
Thank you very much, Tarek Malik with Space.com. I was curious, you mentioned earlier that it's not too early to consider applications of a COTS model or a CCDEV model with commercial firms beyond low Earth orbit. I'm curious what you see as the possibilities there in terms of either targets, uses, partnerships, and how that would dovetail with NASA's goals with Orion and Space Launch System, those types of things. Thank you.
I would essentially say, so we are building a capability, the Space Launch System and the Orion. They in of themselves, by themselves, don't necessarily meet they provide the capability to get us places, but they don't necessarily provide us the capability for sustain us for long periods of time. We need additional capabilities for supporting crew beyond 21 days. That Orion only supports 21 days. We need systems to get us to asteroids beyond, cislunar, what it would take to Mars. So there's a myriad of capabilities that we need beyond the Orion and the SLS to achieve the missions that we want to achieve going forward beyond low Earth orbit. So those are one of the things that I'm talking about, looking in those areas that may make sense, that we can look at different models for partnering with private industry to put it all together to meet our exploration goals. And we need to start thinking about of how we do those things. How you need a lot of propellant or something, or you need certain stages. How might private industry be involved with that? Maybe we need data for precursor missions. Maybe instead of our building a mission to get that data, we partner with private industry to just do a data buy, and I mentioned that earlier. So these are the type of things that are on the table. I don't have the answers. We don't have the answers. I guess what we're saying is it's not too early. It really isn't not too early to start thinking about what other possibilities are out there. And we are soliciting, we're asking folks here within the agency, how do we achieve those goals that the administration, the president, and Congress have laid out to us? How do we achieve them? And how could partnering with industry in new and different ways help us achieve it in a way that makes sense to the taxpayer? I think my time is up.
Check. we'll just take one last question from the online submission.
Okay.
And so it says, beyond just acting as a customer, can NASA act as a creator or joint party for the creation of these marketplaces?
Yeah, interesting question. So what we can do is help assist in developing the capabilities. And that's a great question to ask Mason Peck, when our chief technologist, when he's here later today, in terms of the role that we can play in helping bring some of these capabilities to a certain level where then industry can run with them. I mean, if you look at Dream Chaser as an example, a lot of that work was work that was done at NASA many years ago. And so I think there's ways that we, working private industry, can also help out in terms of building those capabilities that then the private sector can take open and start growing those other markets. But I definitely would, it's one that's right up Mason Peck's alley of how we could do that, and definitely would phrase that question to him later on too. Thank you. And let me just say, I'm here for the morning and through the center director panel this afternoon, so I'm free to chat at any time, so feel free to come chat. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me today to come to speak at NewSpace 2012. It's really good to get this old bureaucrat out in the fresh air, surrounded by folks and organizations who are out there. You all are really pushing the envelope of innovation for a cause that actually is near and dear to my heart in terms of space exploration of the heavens. I have always loved space since I can ever remember, and it is a real privilege to be here amongst folks who share the dream as much that I do. The administrator, Charlie Bolden, Deputy Administrator Lori Garver, send their regards. They are traveling today. We're unable to.
Presentations from the 10 different finalists tomorrow, so be sure not to miss that. And then we have a series of really great panels on Saturday, particularly the closing panel that's going to be at the end of the day on Saturday afternoon. So be sure not to miss that either, culminating with the gala. Besides the program, we have a lot of other great things going on. Be sure to take a chance to go out and check out the exhibit hall. We have a whole bunch of really great exhibits out there, including some with some really interesting hardware, something that we haven't had as much of in the past, so be sure to check that out. Also, we do have some tickets left for the lunches and for the gala, so if you're interested in that, please do so as soon as possible. Go ahead and get those. Aside from that, just take the opportunity here to enjoy the programming, to enjoy the and benefit from the networking opportunities. We'll have a number of networking breaks, one in the morning, one in the afternoon for each day. So be sure to take advantage of those and just generally be able to network. We also have networking events in the evenings for more opportunities. And with that, just a couple of logistical notes. One thing is staff. So you'll see the various badges that are flying around. If you see anybody with the traffic light badge, so yellow, red, green, those are staff. So yellow is the chairs, the red are the managers, and green are the staff. So if you have any questions at any time, go ahead and see anybody with traffic light colors, and they'll be able to help you out, get you any information that you need. Second thing is I'd like to introduce everybody to Curtis Iwata. He is our day manager for today, so he's going to be emceeing the rest of the day, introducing the speakers and the panels. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and move on to the next panel. So I'd like to introduce Dave Radzanowski, the Chief of Staff of NASA HQ. One thing I would like to mention is that Jim Munson would like to say that he regrets that he's not able to make it, and so apologizes for not being able to introduce you himself. Dave has led quite a career with civil service between NASA and various other agencies. Through that, between creativity, integrity, commitment to progress to space, helping out young people, and really giving us an example for what we can strive to. And so that really allows him to tie in and be a great introductory speaker for this conference because we hold a lot of the same ideals. And so what he's going to be talking about is, again, one of the key themes that we have for the conference, which is engaging partnerships, particularly between commercial and civil space. So with that, I'll hand it over to Dave.
To come to speak to you. So you get me. Hopefully I'll be able to fit the bill for you all. They do wish you all a very successful NewSpace 2012 conference. Over the past, I guess, 2 decades, in terms of my professional time, I have seen the commercial space sector really thrive in some areas. I've seen it stumble in others. And yet, through all the peaks and valleys that I've seen over the past 20 years, I have seen a consistent dedication to the dream of exploration for all humankind. You all continue to keep the flame going. You all continue to keep it burning. And these days, I think it's burning brightly, and I will talk to you as why I think that is true. Now, some people will say that it's burning brightly despite NASA.